Welcome back to more UCL Fantasy content. This will be the team selection for Matchday 6, and just like the recent additions, I'm in a similar position in terms of having two goalkeepers who simply aren't good enough and they've got terrible fixtures to boot. One of them is injured and I've got other issues in the outfield positions. All of this could lead me towards taking a -4 hit or even activating the wildcard. It all remains up in the air and I'll make a final decision during the deadline stream, but I'll delve into my transfer plans in this video and review Matchday 5, which was high scoring for a lot of people. Smash the like button and subscribe if you're new if you enjoy my content. I promise to get this to the 200 likes and to keep on pushing towards 31,000 subscribers. All of this is free and smashing the like button costs nothing and really goes a long way supporting the channel. You can also follow me on Twitter and Instagram, DylanRCM, join the Discord server, UCL Fantasy League, Draft Hound, as well as Spotify. All those links are in the description, and if you want to support the channel even further, there is the Patreon and the championships by clicking the join button on YouTube, and those links are also in the description. But without further ado, let's jump straight into it. Some may argue that the infamous duo of Blažević and Di Gregorio won't see heaven, but the latter finally kept a clean sheet in a goalless draw at Villa Park after a contentious goal that was disallowed by Morgan Rogers for a foul on Di Gregorio, and thankfully that really worked in my favour in UCL Fantasy. 6 points isn't anything special, and after all the blanks and the red card he got throughout the entire league phase, it's not really good enough to make up for it, but it's at least one return, and I'd be very happy to see the back of the Italian. It's quite rare for your defender to get a double-digit haul, but in UCL Fantasy, you're going to see it more often than in FPL, for example, and Kim Min-jae scored, got ball recovery points, and earned player of the match in a 1-0 victory over Paris Saint-Germain. He's also a massive differential, so I'm very happy with this pick. In the last couple of match days, he has been fantastic. He also got 10 points in a 1-0 win against Benfica very recently. Next up, though, is the only blank in my starting 11 for the defensive line, and that's Boskagli, who was one of my transfers in, and that was kind of the frustration of this week. There were two things that kind of let me down a little bit, and one of them was my transfers. Boskagli only got 1 point, and Shakhtar Donetsk scored very early in that game, but PSV made a late comeback, and it was Tillman stealing the show on yet another occasion. And I still think Benitez, Boskagli and all these defenders can offer something, and of course Benitez is between the sticks as a budget goalkeeper, but it is a bit frustrating and I'm not that confident of clean sheets for the last 3 match days either. Thankfully though, I got another clean sheet and an 11-pointer by Kubarsi, who earned player of the match and also got some ball recovery points, so I'm very happy with the Spaniard. He's also been quite underwhelming in UCL Fantasy so far this season, and this was by far his best return of the campaign. Jules Koundé is still a better option, but I wouldn't really look to invest in Barcelona defensively at the moment. The only players I'd consider for matchday 6 to 8 are Rafinha, Lewandowski, and maybe Yamal, but he would be very far behind the other two, who are some of the best assets in the game. And to complete this defensive line, I also had Grimaldo, who delivered 18 points with yet another goal. He also got an assist, ball recoveries, and that really helped him to get that mega return. He did something similar with Benfica a couple of years ago, and that's why I invested in him in the first place. This defensive line was incredible this week with 3 double-digit hauls and 2 player of the matches with Kubarsi and Kim Min-jae. There were some disappointments though in the other positions. My original plan during the international break was to upgrade Joshua Kimmich, but some injuries I got pushed me in another direction, so unfortunately I had to keep him. He's still a decent option. At that price and below, he remains one of the better options in UCL Fantasy, but I think you can go to a more expensive midfielder with more attacking potential, and even the likes of Kun and Malambo, who are extremely cheap, they can also offer far more attacking potential, and the same goes for Gittins, who is one of the best budget midfielders in the game this season. Next up though was another transfer in Mohamed Salah. I also took a -4 hit to get these moves, and it just didn't pay off at all. All of them blanked, and Salah missed a penalty against Real Madrid. It's very rare for him to do that. Only a couple of days later, he scored a penalty against Southampton, but Liverpool still got the job done. They beat Man City and Real Madrid in the same week with massive statements in the Champions League and Premier League. They're in a very strong position across all competitions. But on a more positive note, Gittins did get 8 points, and he was one of my options for the Wednesday captaincy, but guess what? I didn't go there and missed out on more points in the process, as I'll show you very soon. But Gittins has been extraordinary this season. Only 1 blank technically, and despite the fact I missed his biggest return of the season back in matchday 1, and when he scored against Real Madrid, I played the limitless chip and didn't have him in my team. I'm still very happy with his contributions while he was in my starting 11, and I can't really ask for much more for a budget midfielder. And to complete things in this position, Florian Wirtz made this midfield look much better than it would have been without Florian Wirtz, one of the golden boys of world football, a 19-point haul, and those that captain him would have been very happy with his returns. Despite Manchester City fumbling a 3-0 lead, Erling Haaland was still able to get on the score sheet and deliver 12 points overall with a brace. It was a very good performance by him, but Man City have one victory out of the last 9 matches, and despite that win against Nottingham Forest, they just aren't able to build a run at the moment. They drew 2-2 against Crystal Palace. Haaland scored in that game, but he's not justifying that price tag in FPL. I think he's more of a hold in UCL Fantasy because he only costs 11 million, but at the same time he's got PSG and Juventus away in the next 2 match days, and I think you could find better value in the forward line with other options, which does include a certain Jonathan David, who I bought in Matchday 5, but he blanked against Bologna. He created a big chance and had a decent performance, but never looked like scoring on the day. He scored a brace and got an assist on Friday night though against Brest in a 3-1 victory for Lille, and I think he's going to be a great option in Matchday 6 and 8, but unfortunately in between, for Matchday 7, you've got that Liverpool away fixture, which looks really poor. In the end, I scored over 100 points in Matchday 5. With the -4 hit, that's 101, and I got a green arrow to 32,000, but I can't help but feel frustrated about my transfers and the captaincy. I went for Rafinha on the Tuesday, and then Salah on the Wednesday. They both blanked, and I managed to skip Erling Haaland, Florian Wirtz, Grimaldo, and Gittins. All of them did very well. Of course, Gittins only got 8 points in the grand scheme of things, but it's still very frustrating not to at least land that and gain a few extra points in the process. Signing Boskagli, Salah, and Jonathan David was even more frustrating because I sold Garassi, who was on the bench for Borussia Dortmund. Yeah, he came off the bench and scored in a very brief cameo, so he technically did very well compared to Jonathan David, Salah, and my other signings. So it's just not really good enough with the transfers. Even in FPL, I've got kind of a poor run going there as well. But at least I got over 100 points and a green arrow. It just could have been much more. We're talking about 120, 130 points perhaps. Hopefully that happens within the next 3 match days, but it will become more difficult with rotation, injuries, and suspensions. It's far from ideal to make a goalkeeper transfer, let alone take a -4 hit, but I'm looking at Maignan and David Raya to replace Blazwich, who's injured, and RB Salzburg are terrible anyway. Now, Maignan and Raya play on the same day as Di Gregorio. I don't really care too much about that. It's just having a main goalkeeper option who can actually keep a clean sheet. I don't expect Juventus to do so against Manchester City at home, whilst AC Milan have fantastic fixtures to round off the league phase, and Arsenal are worth doubling up on defensively, but I've got Saliba in that defensive line already, and I'd rather balance things out with my complexion of the goalkeeper and the defenders. If the backline of my UCL Fantasy team can do anywhere near as good as they did in Matchday 5, I'd be very happy. Boskagli, though, was one of the disappointments of the previous matchday. He does face Brest away, and I'm not expecting PSV to keep a clean sheet here, but he does play on the Tuesday, and we'll see what he can do. That was a mistake, I think, to sign him. I know the fixtures were looking very good for PSV from Matchday 5 onwards, but they aren't a reliable team in that defensive line. But let's see if Boskagli can offer anything, even ball recoveries at least, to salvage a 3 or 4 pointer. I would take that right now from Boskagli, but I would need much more from the rest of my defence. That would also include a certain Kim Min-jae facing Shakhtar Donetsk away, and Bayern Munich have kept so many clean sheets since that 4-1 defeat against Barcelona, but over the weekend they were a bit vulnerable and conceded twice in a 4-2 victory for the Bavarians, and Kim Min-jae has struck a decent partnership with Upamecano this season, but they are prone to errors, especially against top-level opposition. But let's go now to decent options as well. I think Saliba against Monaco at home is probably the standout defender on paper, alongside Kim Min-jae. I'm not too appealed by Boskagli and even my 5th defender who's on the bench, but I do have a certain Grimaldo. Unfortunately, he does face Inter Milan at home, and despite the Italians being a very defensive side, you could still see them scoring against Bayer Leverkusen, who always concede chances. But what you'd be hoping for is for Grimaldo to get something, either a clean sheet, and if not, he can score or assist in any given game. The strongest part about my squad looks like the midfield on paper, with Mohamed Salah facing Girona away, and we can see if he's going to be rotated or not, because Liverpool have the early kickoff on the Tuesday. So during the deadline stream, we can cover Liverpool's lineup and see if Salah starts or not. If he doesn't, that would definitely push me towards activating the wildcard chip, because I would have too many issues with the goalkeeper position, with Harry Kane up front, and then Mohamed Salah in this position. But I think he's a great captaincy option on the Tuesday, and Liverpool didn't feature over the weekend as the Merseyside derby was suspended due to the weather conditions, and that will be rearranged later in the season. But let's now go to the other midfielders, and that includes Rafinha, who has been disappointing for me personally, but I did sign him back in Matchday 4. He got a big return there, and I didn't captain him on the Wednesday at that stage. So my recent captaincy picks haven't been great. Then you add on top of it the transfers in FPL and UCL Fantasy, probably a run of 10 plus moves, which just haven't worked at all. But Rafinha has been one of my better moves in the last couple of weeks, and he does face Borussia Dortmund away. Not an easy game on paper, but I think they'll concede chances, and Barcelona are a better team, at least when you look at the team sheet and the names that you've got, like Robert Lewandowski up front, and you've always got a chance with Rafinha, who's been in incredible form since March. And another midfielder I'm looking to buy is Bukayo Saka, who faces Monaco at home, but Arsenal are so up and down recently. I know they've been on a decent run in the last couple of weeks, beating Sporting 5-1, West Ham 5-2, Nottingham Forest 3-0, and also a 2-0 win against Manchester United, but then they draw 1-1 to Fulham, and they create a lot of big chances. They should have won that game, but it just seems like Arsenal sometimes lack that mentality to get over the line in the Champions League and Premier League. But Monaco have really struggled in recent weeks. They lost 5-2 at home against Benfica, and if they defend that way against Arsenal, they could be put to the sword and easily concede 3 or more goals. And finally, despite the tough fixture, Florian Wirtz is still one of the best UCL fantasy assets in the game, but if I'm on the wild card this week, I probably wouldn't go for the German. Over the last couple of weeks, injuries have certainly pushed me towards taking hits and selling players that I wanted to keep, and Harry Kane facing Shakhtar Donetsk would have been perfect, but he's going to miss Matchday 6, and Gyökeres is the most likely replacement, and it would be for a -4 hit if I also signed Saka to replace Joshua Kimmich, and Maignan in goal to replace Blažević, who has been one of the worst UCL fantasy options I've ever seen, despite the fact he only costs 4.5 million, or at least did at the time. Gyökeres does play Club Brugge though, and I sold him a couple of weeks ago before the Man City game, where he scored a hat-trick, one of the worst decisions I've made all season. He did blank against Arsenal, thankfully, but he still had some chances, more so half opportunities, but Gyökeres can score in any given game. The only downside to this signing is the fact that Sporting are in terrible form themselves, with 3 consecutive losses, including that 5-1 thrashing against Arsenal. But Club Brugge away is a good fixture, and Gyökeres could easily score a goal and earn player of the match. He's already done that on 2 occasions so far this season in the Champions League. And to round things off, I'm also looking to keep Erling Haaland at the moment if I don't wildcard. He faces Juventus away this week, and he hasn't really been at it in the last couple of match days across the Champions League and FPL. More so in the Premier League, I think, because he did deliver 12 points against Feyenoord, and he's got the high ceiling at the Etihad, but not so much in away matches. I think you have to look back a couple of months ago when Haaland was indestructible. He was absolutely fantastic, scoring braces and hat-tricks every single game. But ever since game week 6 in FPL, his form has massively dipped, and the likes of Salah have easily overtaken him. And in UCL Fantasy, he's still quite competitive. However, in the grand scheme of things, if you're playing the Limitless, the wild card, using free transfers or taking a hit, I think if you're in a strong position this week, you could afford to sell Erling Haaland and go for another premium, or the countless options you've got in the mid-price range like Jonathan David, Julian Alvarez, Gyökeres, and all the others I've discussed in my recent UCL Fantasy videos. The bench doesn't look great, and that's something you don't want to hear when you're building a UCL Fantasy team. I've got Di Gregorio facing Man City, but if I sign Maignan or Raya, he will be on the bench regardless. Jonathan David, Gittins, and Kubarsi could be sobbed on after my lowest scoring Tuesday players are taken off, and I've got myself another chance to bolster the score within my 50-man squad. But the only substitution I couldn't make is in the goalkeeper position. I could wildcard though and rectify that small issue, and let's see if Salah starts against Girona. That will be pivotal in terms of determining whether I take a -4 hit, use 2 free transfers, or play the wild card, which is still very, very possible this week, and I'm not ruling that out whatsoever. Now, in terms of the captaincy, I am looking at Mohamed Salah on the Tuesday if he starts. The alternative would likely be Gyökeres, who also plays on the Tuesday, facing Club Brugge away. I think his ceiling will be much lower than Salah's, but Gyökeres could score 2, 3, or 4 goals in any given game, especially in home matches, and I do think he's got 1 or 2 goals in him against Club Brugge. But Salah would be the preference. Facing Girona away, Liverpool had that rest, and if they go strong, I think they could easily beat the Spanish outfit by 3 or 4 goals with the form they're showing. Now, on the Wednesday, I'm very tempted to go to Bukayo Saka if needed, if my original captain flops once again. I think it's very important to nail that Tuesday captain so you can just focus on your substitutions, because I think once it gets to the Wednesday, you can make mistakes like I've done in the last 2 match days when selecting your second captaincy option. But I do think Saka is a great choice here with a plum fixture against Monaco. To give you the full scope of my transfer plans, this is what I'd likely do if I only make 2 free transfers and not take the -4 hit I discussed throughout most of this podcast. So it's essentially the same, either Maignan or Raya to replace Blažević, and then Gyökeres replacing the injured Harry Kane. So I don't take the -4 hit to buy Saka for Joshua Kimmich. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. Do you think that hit would be worthwhile? Which striker would you replace Harry Kane with? And in goal, Maignan, Raya, or perhaps somebody else entirely. It could be a cheaper option like Walter Benitez, Schmeichel, and all the goalkeepers I've mentioned in my Limitless, Wildcard, and Team Selection videos. But I also want to show you what I'd likely wildcard to if I play the chip this week, and it's essentially what I discussed in the wildcard video, but there could be a few changes. I think Vinicius Jr. will start against Atalanta. All the reports indicate that, so he might be red flagged in this game, but he is going to play, and I think he makes a massive difference to Los Merengues. But I could still replace him and go for a different structure, and I could keep Jonathan David on the wild card, and I'd have 4.1 million in the bank, and I could even stretch to Musiala, but it would require a downgrade elsewhere. So I could bring Musiala in for Kun, and then I might have to make a little sacrifice in another area. Franco Israel, by the way, hasn't started the recent games for Sporting, so that's definitely worth mentioning, but I think he'll start in the Champions League unless the manager says otherwise in the press conferences on the Tuesday. But to make this possible, it would be a bit unfortunate and a bit frustrating because I do like the rest of this wildcard team. But one example to make the Musiala move possible from Kun is to downgrade somebody like Tillman, and that wouldn't be ideal, but I don't think he's an essential pick. He's just a differential with a massive ceiling. I could go to Maeda, or maybe just stick with Kun and have a lot of money in the bank, or use that to upgrade certain positions. And I would really like to have Vinicius Jr. though. I think he's a massive differential at this stage with a red flag. A lot of people don't expect him to start. I think he will though, and he's in the Champions League squad for Real Madrid, so I'm very bullish on Vinicius Jr. for the remaining 3 match days. And after Atalanta away, Real Madrid have some very promising fixtures on paper, and I think they'll get the victories needed to qualify for the round of 16. So that's basically it in terms of my transfer plans. At the moment, I'm leaning towards the -4 hit, which I discussed throughout most of this video, but I would not discount the 2 free transfers and not buying Saka or even playing the wild card. A lot depends on the injury news we get on the Monday and Tuesday. Then I'll make a final decision in the deadline stream, but I'm not allergic to playing the wild card chip. I've already played the Limitless back in Matchday 3. It was a relative success, and I think the wildcard could be very strong for the remaining 3 match days of the Champions League phase. Thank you very much for watching this video and listening to this podcast. If you enjoyed it or found it useful, then be sure to smash the like button and subscribe if you're new. I promise to get this video to the 200 likes and to keep on pushing towards 31,000 subscribers and beyond. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram, DylanRCM, and check all the links in the description below for my Patreon and the championships for early access to my videos, amongst many other perks, the Discord server, UCL Fantasy League Draft Hound, as well as Spotify. Leave a 5-star review on my podcast. It goes a long way to support my channel. I wish you all the best of luck for Matchday 6 and the rest of the season, and I'll see you next time.